My name is Anne, and I'm an urban farmer. So I did a school here called Warmonderhof, that's a biodynamic agriculture school. And a few years later, I met Kiki, who's my co-farmer in this project. And we met together in a permaculture course, and that was a really interesting and eye-opening way to look at, well, everything, but particularly in growing food, but really putting that into a bigger perspective. And we were both really interested in doing a bigger project that would really be producing substantial amounts of food for people in the city, so really feeding people. And we thought about the model that we most liked for farming, and the one we decided we were most enthusiastic about was this community-supported agriculture model. It's a perfect model for people who are just starting out because you don't have to take out huge loans and go into debt to start your project. So the way it works is that you build a community of people who are excited about your project and want you to grow food for them, and they pay a certain amount each month to be part of the project. So what that means is that they share in all of the abundance of what we produce here on the farm. We're growing pretty much everything, and there's a lot of food for them. So they share in the abundance, but they also share in the risks, and that's also really important for a beginning farmer. It's also really important in times of food insecurity, which is happening more and more often because of global climate change. So if something were to go terribly wrong on the farm, or if we lose a couple of crops, they still are supporting us financially. So they pay at the beginning of the year, and then they come every week or every second week, and they harvest what's ready for them to harvest. So we've got a list for them. This is what our harvest board looks like. So when the harvesters come Thursday, Friday, or Saturday, they get this list. They usually take a photo of this so they can walk around with it. And some things we've already harvested for them, and that we do if it's things that just need regular harvesting, like beans you need to harvest pretty much every day or every second day. All of the courgettes and the zapalitos and the squash, we also harvest regular. They get huge. The peppers we do for them because they're here in the greenhouse. And then we also use sticks. So we have bamboo sticks with blue tape on top if it's something that they should be harvesting. Because in the beginning, they don't necessarily know what things look like. We've had some mishaps, like, once we said harvest the 5 biggest radishes in one area, and we had the stick there. But right next to the radishes where it was kohlrabi, and somebody came back with 5 kohlrabi, for example. So that kind of thing can happen if you're not really clear. The markings have to be really clear. But generally it goes pretty well, and then you can see that they learn over the course of the year how to harvest. And it's a beautiful business model in a lot of ways, also because you can just get started. It's not we haven't been getting rich from the income yet. The first year we didn't make very much money at all, but the second year we made a little bit more, so that's now. I think we'll have modest salaries this year. And what we're really hoping is that next year we have almost normal, decent salaries, because by that time we'll have 75 members that will start at the beginning of the year. So we've been building up to 75 this whole year. We may raise the prices a little bit as well, if the members are okay with that. We've been kind of keeping them low just to make sure that we can actually deliver we can deliver all the food we hope to deliver. That's been working really well. So, and we've done most of our major investments. So what we're hoping is next year we'll have a good living wage for the work that we're putting in. It's really hard to find land around probably most cities in the world, but around Amsterdam it's particularly hard. But Kiki was at that time working at the Fruittuin van West, which is a beautiful big orchard that's been around for about 4 years, run by the Sturkenboom family. And it's all different types of fruit trees, lots of apples and pears and cherries and berries and lots of chickens. And it's an incredibly inspiring and beautiful place. And Will, the farmer, said that he would love for us to set up our permaculture project on his land and all the pieces of land that he wasn't using. So we have all these long strips of land between the fruit trees and the water. So it's kind of spread out all through the terrain. And there's some great advantages to working here within this bigger Fruittuin project because there's lots of people walking around all the time picking fruit, and they look at the vegetables and they're really curious and they ask, how can we get involved? So it's been a really nice way for us to get members. call this a permaculture project, or we call it more of a project that's using a lot of permaculture principles. Our approach is very much permaculture based. What's I think most important is that it's really grounded in the 3 ethics of permaculture. So that's earth care, people care, and fair share. The earth care is all about, for us, it's about taking care of the soil. So we're not like large-scale agriculture projects where we're destroying the soil. Instead, we're trying to replenish the soil and to actually improve it. So we make it better and better each year through our techniques. We also really encourage the biodiversity of the place. So again, not like large-scale monoculture agriculture. We've got lots of polycultures, lots of different type of crops, always different things flowering. So we attract lots of insects and bees and all kinds of other creatures that are part of our bigger project. So it actually feels a lot like an ecosystem that we're encouraging at this place. So that's the earth care part of it. The people care, it's a really important part of the CSA model, because what you're doing is not just delivering food to people and not having any connection with them, but we're creating connections between the people who support us, who come to harvest, and ourselves, the farmers. And for a lot of people, this is the reason they join this project, because they want to know their farmers, they want to know about their food and how it's grown, but they also really like to talk about what's happening in the garden. A lot of them are very involved also in the growing of the food. And you see that growing food and being part of this garden and harvesting together is very nourishing for people. So that's part of the people care. The people care is also on a bigger scale, almost on a planetary level. For us, it's really important that we're eating locally, we're growing locally, we're feeding people locally, and that takes a lot of pressure off people on the other side of the world. A lot of the farmland in other countries is used to feed people in northern industrialized countries. And that really feeds into the whole fair share part of it, which is this, it's about food sovereignty, the idea that people have the right to produce and choose their own food. They don't have to be forced to grow for markets that are on the other side of the world. So that people are able to have healthy, nutritious food right where they live. And also the idea of environmental space, which is more an idea of equity, that we all have equal rights to this food. So we should be using our space here and not trying to expropriate space on the other side of the world. Another really important part of the work we do at the Fruittuin is education. So we were asked by Will and Lisanne to run the educational program. The idea is to show them what it's like to be a farmer. So basically we engage them in the work that we're doing. So sometimes we're sowing crops with them. A lot of times we're gathering mulch and then mulching the plants. That's a really nice activity to do with children. A lot of watering. We're doing a lot of watering with them in the dry months. Harvesting. We spend a lot of times with the chickens as well, and you see a lot of kids are a little bit nervous about the chickens to begin with because they don't know chickens at all. And by the end, they're mostly sitting with a chicken on their lap and they want to take one home. And it's incredibly exciting for the kids, and it's very rewarding for us because they're excited about being here. They're excited about the farming work. They actually help us quite a bit with their work. And you see a lot of times that kids that don't function so well in a classroom, once they're outside and they're given a job to do where they're working hard and moving a lot, then they do really, really well. So we were really excited about the idea of creating a community. Both of us thought that was a really important aspect of the project, and I think that's been a very successful part of the project because we have all these people, amazing people that come, and we have relationships with all of them. But what's even nicer is that we've been seeing that they start to have relationships with each other as well. So they'll have little chats with each other and they'll exchange recipes and they'll go off and harvest together. And some of them even have a life relationship outside the garden now. So that's nice. And they really appreciate the fact that we are trying to do things in a way that's really in harmony with nature. So they understand that we let things flower sometimes to attract pollinators. They really appreciate the fact that things are quite diverse. You know, we don't have monoculture. In every bed we have a few different crops, so it looks quite beautiful and diverse, and it's much nicer for nature that way. we did need to do a fair amount of education in the beginning about why, for example, we don't want people walking on the beds, and why, when they're, if they're cutting off their onion tops, for example, that they can leave that on top of the bed. So that sort of technique you do have to explain to them a bit. But they like it, and they're also people that are very keen to learn about how food is produced. So that's one of the attractions. There are other schemes in Amsterdam where they could have a box delivered to them, for example, but these people don't want that. They want to be here on the farm, and they have lots of questions about how things are growing, and they really appreciate updates as well about what's doing well and what's not doing so well, why it's not doing so well, can they help if things aren't going so well. So we've also asked them to step in a few times when there's big jobs that need to be done kind of quickly. So I think it's a really nice place to be, and I think that is maybe the most, we're growing really nice food too, but I think as important, we've made this a place where people really like to be, and they feel like, I think you feel hopeful when you're somewhere like this. There's so many horrible things happening in the world, and the food system's such a wreck, but when you're here for a day, you actually see, okay, that something else is entirely possible, and we're creating this together. So that feels really inspiring.